This is World Comics Review, and I'm back on Comic Book Plus, and today I'm looking at the Liberty Boys of '76, number 120 from April 1903. So the Liberty Boys of '76 is something I see a lot on the channel called Dime Novel Hunter, which is the guy who often features things like this, like old, well, I call them Edwardian or Victorian era story papers from the USA, but he's not really reviewing them or talking about them. It's just he's a dealer in them and sells them on eBay, so he makes videos to show off the condition and stuff. But I decided to search for them, and that's how I found my way back to Comic Book Plus again. So this is actually the very first American pulp that I ever read, and I was distinctly underwhelmed, to be honest. But then again, at about the same time I was reading this, I'd also been reading some of the early issues of The Magnet by Charles Hamilton. So the Magnet was at its best at the same time as the Union Jack was in the 1920s and 1930s, but Charles Hamilton really hit the ground running with the Magnet, so jumping from that to this kind of paper was a bit of a shock. Much nicer cover art though. Most British story papers at this time still had just black ink on some sort of coloured paper for their covers, but this is nice and fully coloured. So yeah, the Liberty Boys of '76, as you can possibly guess, is all about the American Revolution. It follows, or seems to follow, I've only read one and a bit, the same characters who are loosely based on a real regiment of young soldiers. They would have called them boys at the time, but they're probably more like 18 to 19. And yeah, they were called the Liberty Boys. But I guess all of these stories are actually fictional, much like the stories of Buffalo Bill. They were based on a real guy, but yeah, he went on millions of adventures in story papers that never actually happened. So anyway, somewhat unusually, or at least I wasn't expecting it, this doesn't have any inside illustrations. It's just, this is what all the pages are like, just two columns of text all the way through. So yeah, as I was saying, this the writing style was kind of underwhelming to me. It's kind of there's not really much colour to the writing, I guess you could say. It's just a description of a list of events that happen in order, and a lot of the dialogue's kind of really stilted too, like let's do this, and then do this, and then do this. Anyway, so it opens with Captain Dick Slater, who's the leader of the Liberty Boys, and he's also earned for himself the champion spy of the revolution by going undercover. But there may have been a real Captain Dick Slater who led the real life Liberty Boys, but I doubt he did anything like this. So the Liberty Boys are attached to another regiment of regular Americans who are marching on the Mohawk Valley in the year 1777 to relieve a fort that's under siege from the British. And the force he's attached to is led by Benedict Arnold, and I don't really know much about the American Revolution, but that name was familiar to me, so I looked up Wikipedia, and Benedict Arnold actually turned traitor much later and joined the British side, but at this point he was still a hero of the American Revolution, and it doesn't mention like how he was with the evil traitor who changed sides later. It just mentions that he's their commanding officer. So anyway, he's scouting ahead of the main force, and he runs across some gypsies, and the old woman offers to tell his fortune and manages to get it incredibly accurate. But yeah, there's no like rational scientific explanation afterwards. She's just using actual magic. Never mind. He tries to get information out of her too by asking if her or her family have seen anything in the vicinity, like the Indians, because a lot of the tribes are allied with the British in this place, or the Tories, which is what they called the Americans who remained loyal to the crown. Although in modern Britain, Tory is the nickname of people in the Conservative Party, which is the party that's currently in power in the UK, with Boris Johnson and Theresa May and David Cameron were all a member of the Tory party. But in the old days, the ancestor of the modern Conservative Party, I guess that was actually called the Tories, and the main rivals were called the Whigs, and I think the Whigs at the time supported American independence, and the Tories were against it, so they ended up nicknaming the loyalists in America Tories. Anyways, gets into a fight with the gypsy woman's son, or sons, but captures them, takes them back to the main camp, and they agree to change sides and join the revolution. So one of them is sent off to the British camp to spread discord by saying that a much larger American force is approaching than actually is, and some of the natives have also joined the Americans. See if I can find the name of the tribe. Given that they make Benedict Arnold a sympathetic character, I guess the bare bones details of the battles and events are possibly accurate, although the individual stories about the characters are completely fictional, or only very loosely based on reality. So yeah, the gypsy ends up in the British camp, starts sowing discord, and the British and their native allies start fighting each other and getting drunk. So Dick followed the gypsy to make sure he doesn't turn back into a Tory, but he bypasses the British camp and gets to the American fort. The soldiers from there decide to form a pincer attack on the British, but Dick goes back to tell the approaching American force, but gets lost on the way, but catches up with them, and the pincer attack ends up being a success anyway. And that's the end of the first part of the story, which is I'm just going for these endless pages of text. So this paper is actually like two stories in one. So that was the first story. They defeat the force that's laying siege to this fortress, and then after that they come back down the valley and rejoin an even bigger American force, which is on one side of a river, and the British are on the other. So the Liberty Boys, all 100 of them, cross over very slowly in two boats and start capturing small parties of British soldiers. And they find a abandoned factory in a forest and start keeping their ever-growing number of prisoners there. So there's 100 Liberty Boys, and they want to capture one prisoner each. So they keep going out, seizing ever larger search parties of British soldiers who are sent to find the ones who were captured. And they eventually run across a farmer who's being intimidated by the British, so they hide in his wagon on the hay, and then spring out on some camping redcoats nearby and take them prisoner too. So that's the incident from the cover. And the farmer's daughter falls in love with one of the Liberty Boys, so they stay camped near the farm, and this guy keeps finding excuses to go to the farm to get eggs and chickens and water and whatever, and agrees to marry the daughter. So there's kind of a extremely rudimentary romantic story in there too. Anyway, it doesn't really matter which page I jump to, there's no inside illustrations. So having finally sprung their surprise on the British soldiers, the British come looking for them. I pressed the wrong button again. Doesn't matter which page I go to, I'll just show you one of the text pages. The British come looking for them, find the Liberty Boys camped on a hill, so they come up and surround them. But the kind of weird hermit who lives in a cave reveals there's a secret entrance to the cave on the hill. So they, after a small battle, the British decide to charge the top of the hill and find there's nobody there. So the Liberty Boys have slipped away, and eventually, having captured one prisoner each, they transport all of those prisoners back across the. We transport all of their prisoners back across the river. I'll go to the right page in a minute. Right. Previous, not first. Wild West Weekly, right. Previous, not first. They yeah, oh, they capture more than 100 prisoners actually, and the old hermit just kind of lives happily ever after too. So yeah, that's it. They sow discord in a British camp, cause a riot, make a successful pincer attack, and then sneak across a river, capture more than one prisoner each, and bring them back, and that's basically the end. So yeah, my first American pulp, and kind of distinctly underwhelming. There's I believe, oh yeah, three more, four in total, Liberty Boys stories on Comic Book Plus. So I'll check another one out and see if they get any better. Unfortunately, there's no shadow on this site. It's currently 1922 and earlier. Oh yeah, I should mention that the Liberty Boys of '76 ran from 1901 to 1925. So yep. So yeah, there's no shadow on this website, and I was trying to buy some shadow from Sanctum Books in the USA, who have actually lost the shadow license, but they're still selling off their old stock. But they wanted individual postage for each one, so I tried to buy 4, and they wanted $20 of postage for each one, so it was $80 for postage. So I had to cut back a bit. So I might go back and buy 1 at some point, or email them and see if they do combine postage, but possibly not. So yeah, I'll finally get some shadow and check that out. I'm expecting it to be much better than this.